Hello everyone. This is the 17th part of the story Game of Thrones, the Prideful one. Chapter 81. It was time to go for the crown, but before that I had to make sure that Daenerys had enough military power to hold the cities we had conquered in Essos. Considering that we had an army of 100,000 soldiers, I decided to leave Daenerys with 30% of our army, not counting animals. That way she would be safe, and with enough military strength to fight back. In total, she would have at her disposal 40,000 soldiers, and about 40,000 animals, including horses, bears, ravens, and other animals. Leaving her with a total of 80,000 soldiers ready to die for her. Meanwhile, I would take about 65,000 soldiers west to attack the Lannisters, not counting my animals in Neltharion who had begged to go with me. There was no longer any reason for me to stay in Essos. By conquering Braavos and eliminating all rats within the city, I had cemented our power in this continent as something unshakable and unstoppable. I should go with you, Daenerys argued. She was not happy with my decision, and in part, I could understand her, but if she came with me to the west she would become a target for the Lannisters, whereas if she stayed in Essos, no one would be able to reach her. The Krakens would make sure of that, stopping any ships that weren't mine. I know, honey, but I need you to keep this place under control. You are my queen, and you must rule this continent while I'm away, I said, kissing her hand. I understand, but I don't like it, Daenerys sighed with a faint smile, and in her eyes, I could see clear as the day that more than wanting to avenge her family, she didn't want to be separated from me, which made me immensely happy. The fact that she loved me more than she hated those who betrayed her family was impressive of its own. Ada, ABA. Geralt babbled adorably, once again melting my heart. You two are going kill daddy with that cuteness, I chuckled, kissing my son on the forehead. Alyssa, on the other hand, was laughing as she looked at me as if I were the best clown in the world. Is daddy funny? Daenerys asked playfully to our daughter, who answered with more laughter. Hee hee, I chuckled, carrying the twins high in the air, my two treasures. I thought with Daenerys I had experienced true love, and in a way I did, but with my kids, I felt like gravity wasn't holding me on the ground anymore. It was them. I would kill, die, and suffer for them without hesitation. Oberyn Martell point of view. After helping my new king eliminate the threats, or rats as he calls them, within Braavos, I decided to test how strong he really was by challenging him to a friendly duel. I knew he was strong. The almost 100,000 Dothrakis following him were more than enough proof, but I still wanted to see just how strong he was. I lost the duel in under 1 minute, and I can't tell that minute was just him being graceful. I wasn't prepared at all for the abysmal difference between our strengths. For the first time in decades I felt like a child fighting against a master, but with the difference that something inside me knew for certain that no matter how much I trained, nothing would shorten that massive gap. But this didn't bother me at all. On the contrary, I preferred to follow a king with strength and intelligence, someone who would lead his army by example, risking his life first so that others would do the same for him. That's the king of King Dorne would follow, not an entitled brat with a doubtful claim to the throne. We didn't care he came from a small house, or that he didn't have royal blood within him. In Dorne we judge the person by their worth, not that of their family. Though him having married Daenerys helped, but that only helped him so much. Well, things ought to be fun with him around, I chuckled, eager to leave Essos, and wage war against those rotten lions. Tywin Lannister point of view. In a fortunate event, Renly had died in a mysterious way. Some said that a shadow entered his chambers and killed him, blood magic. Others that one of his own knights had betrayed him. In the end, it didn't matter how died, because with Renly out of the picture we could turn this war in our favor. By marrying Joffrey with Margaery Tyrell we would secure an army that alongside ours would be able to face the young bear and his army. The idiot of a daughter I had was not happy at all with my decision to marry her little mad dog off to a Tyrell, but her opinion on the matter was irrelevant and non-important. Without this alliance we didn't have much of a chance of winning this war. Cersei will not forget this, father, Tyrion said with a sigh. Perfect, let her. She is not here to rule. If she were we would have already lost the crown by now, I replied with apathy. Cersei had to understand that she was not as clever as she thought she was. In fact, among my children, she was the most problematic. On that, we can agree. Tyrion laughed for a brief second before asking, with Renly out of the way, we can focus on dealing with Stannis. We still have time before the young bear arrives. Any ideas? I glanced at Tyrion for a second, as he filled his cup of wine, before I answered. Stannis is more experienced in the art of war than his little brother was in the art of war, but he is as charismatic as a cow. He doesn't inspire loyalty out of love or fear, he will fall in his time. I see, Tyrion hummed, sitting back on his chair. Olenna Tyrell. The sorry excuse of a man whom we had allied with had died, and in part one was thankful. This, of course, led the Lions to invite us to their side immediately. Maybe they killed him, or maybe they were desperate with the imminent threat that Ronald Mormont represented. They wanted to marry Marjorie to that little demon named Joffrey. Rumors of his cruelty and madness had already spread far and wide across the Seven Kingdoms, and I was not going to allow my granddaughter to suffer at his hands. Marjorie would be queen, but not with that spawn of the hell as her king. Tommen Baratheon, on the other hand, was, as rumors say, soft, king-hearted, and more importantly manipulable. Joffrey had to die. Besides, it not like anyone but his mother would miss him, but I doubt even Cersei is that blind to love that thing. Where are we going to the capital, grandmother? Marjorie inquired, content with the idea of marrying hastily to secure her position of queen. In 1 month, I answered with a faint smile. Poor naive child, good thing she has me to protect her, otherwise the idiot of a son I have would doom her to a life suffering. Jon Snow point of view. Humanity was in grave danger. The others, the White Walkers, existed and were moving, evolving, ever-changing. I had to let others know they were real. But before I managed to escape, a cold voice stopped me. Humanity's time has run out. You now walk upon the darkness, child. The light won't protect you here, young dragon. Nothing will, the undead said with a cold tone, the same one that had killed my entire scout party. All will serve in death. Chapter 82. After making sure Daenerys had everything under control, I proceeded to mobilize all the ships, which were barely enough to move all the men and animals I was moving over the west. My initial destination would be the north, where I would go to see Lord Stark to discuss the terms of our alliance. Then I would let my army rest so that everyone would be at their best when the war really began. It will take us a month to get there. Oberyn sighed in annoyance, but I suppose it worth the wait. With how you act, I would have thought you loved traveling. Was that assumption incorrect? I inquired as I kept my gaze on the sea. I love traveling, Oberyn replied with a soft chuckle. What I hate is the waiting, the time in between. Understandable, I nodded in agreement as I walked to my cabin, leaving Oberyn alone. My mission was to get some peace and quiet. How oblivious I was that concept was now impossible for me. Not only I was a king, I was a dad, which made peace and quiet an impossibility for me. And that concept was reaffirmed in my room, because upon entering said room I found Neltharion fighting with one of the battle bears, both locked on the floor biting each other on an epic duel of. I don't know, a quick glance to my bed reveals it had been torn to pieces by the collateral damage of this fight. Neltharion had taken it upon himself to fight anyone, and when I asked him why, he would only answer that he wanted to be as strong as me and he needed the experience, which usually made me ignore his odd behavior, because, well, I'm not made out of stone. That he wants to be like me is adorable and pushes all the right buttons for me to let him do his thing. I'm too tired to be dealing with this shit, I sighed as I walked out of the room, not wanting to diffuse whatever situation they had. My new destination, my backup room, or room especially designed for these types of emergencies. Jon Snow point of view. Fear was a common thing. You can deal with it, but that doesn't make you fearless. All my life I had dealt with my fears, but what I saw that day. That thing, how his mere presence made me the grip of death, that was something I wasn't prepared to deal with. Don't be afraid. I won't kill you, yet. But let the bear know I'm coming for him and in my path. All life will end. I had been forgiven, spared just because I served a purpose, a menial purpose, to deliver a message. I wanted to fight, I wanted to kill that thing for what it did to my brothers in the Watch, but my entire body refused to raise a finger against him. No matter how hard I tried, all I could do was see him leave, not before he desecrated even more my fallen brothers by raising them from the death, to be nothing but mere puppets. Humanity as a whole was at risk, the crown, the lands, the power, nothing would matter if we didn't stop that monster. This was bigger than me, bigger than the Game of Thrones, and more importantly bigger than my oath to the Watch. I had to break my oath, and even if I ended up dead because I had deserted the Watch, it would be worth it if I managed to warn just one person. We are leaving tonight, Ghost, I petted my one trustworthy friend, who tilted his head in confusion. Lord Snow, hurry up and go and clean the gates. One of my superiors shouted. This was my opportunity. No one ever supervised me when cleaning the gates that were going south. No one suspected of me. After all, I came here out of my free will. This was perfect, especially because it was night. It would take them a while to notice I was gone, and by the moment they did notice, it would be too late. Yes, sir, I nodded, going to the gates with Ghost behind me. Hours passed by, and my moment to escape finally came when the watch was switching the men to watch over the tower. I ran, like never before, knowing full well that if I stopped even for a second my life would be forsaken. I had to, for I no longer was fighting for myself, but for the living. I had to survive just 1 month. That's all the time I needed to get back to Winterfell and warn my father of this. Young Griff point of view. Ronald Mormont was the biggest threat to my reign. He had a massive army. He was good at leading, and he was married to my aunt. All I had was the Golden Company, and that wasn't enough to deal with him. Not only he was a thorn on my side on Esso, but he was also one in Westeros. My sources say he has alliances with Dorne and the North. There was a chance I could win Dorne over by offering them my hand in marriage, but I had a feeling I would die before I even managed to move with that plan. So I had to resort to other means to achieve what I wanted. I had heard stories of how the free folk are numerous and good at fighting, and how they would do anything to go across the wall. Them alone were more than enough to fight Ronard, perhaps even outnumber his army, and all I had to do in order to win was offer the wildling what they have always wanted, their freedom, in exchange for loyalty. Are you sure this is the best idea, my king? John Cunnington inquired. It is, I nodded. We need the army, for the bear to fall. The Golden Company is with you, my king, the commander of the Gold Company said, kneeling. I'm glad, my friends, I smiled, for we are about to venture to wild lands. We are going beyond the wall. We'll follow you there, and to hell if necessary, my king, my men chanted. And I knew things would turn just fine. I was born to be king, and no bear would stand chance against a true dragon. Daenerys' point of view. Ronard had left, once again. These days it seemed like our time together was a thing of the past now, and while I knew it was for our cause, I couldn't help but miss him. But I had to play my part. He was trusting me to keep Essos under control, and I would do more than that. I would conquer the rest of Essos in our name, so when the time to go west comes nothing will ever tear off apart. I had Crow and Regal with me. With them I would destroy our enemies on this side of the sea with blood and fire, for my husband, and more importantly for my kids. What are your orders, my queen? Daisy inquired. We are going to Yunkai, I informed her. We are taking that city. I will finish what my husband started. I will eliminate our enemies. Daisy looked at me for a second before kneeling. My sword is yours to command. I would die for you, not because you are my queen, but because you are my family. I smiled, and I am glad every day of my life to be part of it. My words were nothing but the truth, and because of it I would protect them, with fire and blood. Chapter 83. My trip to Westeros was pretty much uneventful, with some minor problems, but most of them were Neltharion fighting animals, because of his so-called training. The North was just as I remembered, cold, and oddly welcoming. I kinda missed the non-complicated days where all I had to worry about was my house. Here we are. Oberyn muttered, I don't know how you Northerners survive in here. So cold. I suppose some Northerners would say the same about Dorne, I chuckled. Fair enough, Oberyn nodded. We continued chatting about random stuff as we approached Bear Island. From afar I could see my great-aunt waiting for me with my men and the remaining bears on the island. It took my ship around 20 minutes to get to the coast, where I jumped out of the ship, landing in front of my aunt with a big smile. Hello there, I smiled. You'll be the death of me, Meej sighed with a chuckle. Doubt it, I gave her a look that said, your 2 daughters are maybe worse than me, going to another continent and stuff. Well, every Mormont woman is crazy one way or another, Meej laughed. I hummed, pretending I was deep in thought before nodding. I can testify to that. So what can we do for your highness? Meej said as she knelt, no sign of hesitation, no anger at me for going for the crown, nothing. I actually expected her to be a tad more volatile this reunion. Well, for now, any news? I inquired. The Starks pledged themselves to you, and offer a betrothal between Daisy and Robb, Meej informed me, which in turn immediately made me laugh, to the point of gasping for air. I knew they wanted to marry Robb to Daisy, not that I would accept, but if Daisy accepted this proposal. I can already tell who will be the lady on that equation. I'm sorry, I finally managed to say, after composing myself a bit, but every time I imagine them together. It makes me laugh. Meej at me for a second before starting to laugh. I thought I was the only one. Anyway, we are going to rest here for a couple days before leaving to Winterfell, I said, deciding to go back on track. In the meantime, you are in charge of accommodations. Also start gathering our men, Ironborns included. We will march full strength soon, so it's better to have them ready. As you wish, Meej nodded. Perfect, I smiled. Jon Snow point of view. I have no idea how long I've been running, hiding, making sure my brothers in the Watch don't catch me. It has been rough for me. By this time I thought I would be home, with my family, but evading the party they had sent after me had derailed me from my original path. But I had to persevere. My life was inconsequential in the great scheme of things. I was but a mere messenger, but one with a very important message. That night will forever haunt me, the night I fully realized I was too weak, a bastard that couldn't even die right. But besides the fact that winter was coming for us all, there was another thing that didn't make much sense to me. Why did that monster refer to me that way, calling me a dragon? Did that had something to do with my mother? No, I must focus. I'm the only know that knows about the dangers beyond the wall. What or how that monster talked to me is irrelevant right now. If we keep this pace we should be one in 1 or 2 weeks. Ghost, I petted my companion. Growl? Ghost tilted his head. I don't know, but we are in it together, I chuckled, feeling as if he asked me what would be of us after we delivered the message. I would probably die for deserting the Watch, but Ghost could stay with my family. After all, he didn't break an oath. Ned Stark point of view. Jon had deserted the Watch. A raven from the wall had arrived with this problematic news. This was unexpected and unbecoming of him. Why would he do such a thing? Why would he abandon his oaths? He must have a reason to do it. But what? He was safe on the wall. He was finally out of everyone's reach. I promised his mother, my sister, I would keep him safe from this world, from this game, and he was safe in the wall. If the wrong person discovered his real identity, it would be the end of him. Ronard would kill him if he thought Jon represented a threat to his claim, and even if that didn't come to happen, the Watch would claim his head for deserting them, so the only way to protect my son was finding him first. Jon, were you? I muttered. Ronard Mormont point of view. 3 days later. Jon had deserted the Watch. Well, that was unexpected. I always thought him to be the kind of guy that never misses a day of work and follows every rule in the book. Then again, in the TV show he kinda banged a wilding, the supposed natural enemy of the Watch, so perhaps he is a rebel in disguise. And now he was going to die because of it. Nonsense, how utterly stupid the system of the wall is. I can understand criminals being forced to stay and never fuck, but volunteers should follow different rules. Jon is an idiot, not going to sugarcoat that, but he is a good idiot. One that happens to fill or fit a position I had in mind. With his total lack of ambition, the job was made for him. Jon Targaryen, Lord of House Targaryen, he would be the perfect lord, being that he would be the only one not trying to stab me for power. Alright, I nodded, deciding I would help the stupid wolf out of this situation, so with a smile I ran out of my room, to Oberyn's. Oh, for the love of Dorne, you need a bell, Oberyn chuckled, pointing out I had startled him. What can I do for you, my king? Well, how do you feel about going to hunt a missing crow? I smiled. You aren't giving me much information, but yeah, sure, I'm in, Oberyn smirked, but if you wanted time alone, we don't need excuses. I slowly raised an eyebrow as I said, you are barking at the wrong tree, pal, I don't swing that way. Oberyn smiled, you can't judge a man for trying, now can you? I can, and I am. I wasn't really sure if he was confident on his sex appeal or was delirious. Just don't tell the queen, Oberyn muttered, I would make a terrible Unsullied. Yeah, I kinda want to now. I smirked at him, wondering what the hell did my beautiful wife tell him, for him to lose his cool demeanor for a second. Oh well, on the bright side, I already have a bunch of kids, so I suppose it already served its purpose, Oberyn laughed. I have to admit, Oberyn is an interesting guy, that even on the sight of losing his best friend, he keeps on smiling and joking and messing around. I wonder if everyone in Dorne is like him. Nothing against your preferences, but don't hit on me again, got it? I informed him. Duly noted, but it was mostly a joke, to be honest, Oberyn chuckled. How so? I inquired. Since the day we had our little duel, Oberyn sighed, I was made aware of the vast difference between our skills, and I don't like that. I like to be the one leading, if you catch my drift, but I was curious to see how you would react to me hitting on you, frankly better than your wife. She can be quite territorial. Oh, I see. I nodded as I pushed him against wall, holding his body by neck above the ground with my hand. If you hit on my wife again, let's just say your brother will be able to kick your ass from that wheelchair of his, understand? Scratch my last statement, Oberyn coughed, gasping for air. You two are territorial. Then don't mess with us, I growled. Roger that, Oberyn nodded, his eyes turning a bit red before I dropped him. Wow, well, good to know your triggers before I trigger them. Anyway, what was that about us hunting a crow? Chapter 84. Finding John was easy, barely an inconvenience. Being that I had over 100 ravens looking for him, it took a few hours to get his location, and another few to arrive where he was. From afar I could see he was tired, like he hadn't slept for quite a while. His entire setting was depressing. By his side, there was a big white dire wolf, quite the creature, majestic if I might add. A few hundred meters away, I could hear the hounds from the watch, coming for him, howling in their persecution. We are looking for that kid. Why? Oberyn chuckled. He has a role to fill, and is the only one I know that can. I rolled my eyes at the old snake, as I slided through the snow towards John. It took a few moments, but as Wolf was the first one to notice me, Ghost immediately put on a defensive position in front of John, making me chuckle. How adorable, I wrestle with dragons, a wolf is a day in the spa for me these days. Hell there, I rolled towards John, landing on a perfect T-pose. Ronard? John muttered in disbelief, questioning what his eyes were seeing. Ins Oberyn said as he rolled beside me, Oberyn. That was fun. See, you can do stuff with all the snow around, I chuckled. I have something important to tell you, John said, coming back to the living world after a minute of processing my sudden appearance. No time to waste, I chuckled, pointing to where the dog sounds were coming. They are coming for you, and I would rather avoid killing people to save your sorry ass. I wouldn't mind, killing people can be quite fun, Oberyn smiled. Don't pay attention to him, he is crazy, I sighed. Aren't we all, my king? Are we all? Oberyn laughed. Ignoring Oberyn, I called the 3 horses I had brought with me, giving one to John, and immediately rode us to Winterfell. For the apples. One of the horses shouted with a bloodthirsty smile. We aren't fighting Asmo, nor we will fight anytime soon, a more calmed horse said, taking a deep breath. Well, we can still ride for the apples, they are good either way, my horse commented. Eventually I started to tune out their conversation, as I focused on the scenery around us. From where we had found John to Winterfell, it took us roughly 5 hours on horse, which on foot would have taken John a couple days, or more. I already had some men waiting for us in Winterfell, around 300 to be precise. These guys were ones that I had brought with me beside Oberyn to help me with this hunt, but in reality I had brought them for no real reason, besides giving their salaries a reason to exist. I'm finally here, John said with a faint smile, probably thinking his father would cut his head for deserting his brothers in the watch. The kid is making me feel depressed, Oberyn said, eyeing Job. I don't like feeling sad. I have but 3 emotions, angry, horny and happy. I don't want a 4th, make it stop. I had to stifle my overwhelming desire to laugh, as to avoid making John feel even worse. It's okay, John, no one will kill you. Today at least. I don't fear death, John sighed. I was ready to die the moment I decided to break my oaths. Once I deliver the message I came to deliver, I will be fully ready to embrace death. I eyed him for a second before sighing. You know nothing, Jon Snow. That feels like something catchy, like a motto. Oberyn smirked at John. I like it, I will use it now. Perhaps death is a gift. John muttered, glaring at Oberyn, as he followed us as we entered Winterfell. Inside the walls of Winterfell, there was all the Starks waiting for us, practically in the same formation they had when they welcomed Robert Baratheon in the show. Ned Stark was the first one to greet me, with a smile that tried hard to hide his doubts, not of following me, but wondering if I still resented him. My king, I have kept the North safe for you, Ned Stark said as he eyed me for a second, before adding, you have changed a lot. I nodded. Lord Stark, good to see you alive. I'm glad my countermeasures to keep the North stable worked. That was partly a lie. I had originally made the deal with Varys to save the girls. Him surviving all that shit wasn't a factor I bother to consider at the moment, but that doesn't mean I won't milk this cow, forever reminding him he is alive because of me. All thanks to you, your grace, Ned Stark smiled. My wife, Caitlin Stark. Approaching Lady Stark, as Lord Stark was presenting her, I noticed she was practically murdering me with her gaze full of disgust and hate. The love is palpable, I chuckled. Excuse me, my lady, Oberyn approached her with his trademark smile. I would love to invite you to Dorne. I'm sure my people can weaponize the venom coming out of your eyes, putting it to better use. Everyone gasped in shock, while Arya and I shared a silent chuckle. Don't waste your poison on that man, he is quite resilient, believe I know. You can't fool me, you are and will forever be a small good-for-nothing peasant, and if I had it my way you would be dead by now. Caitlin hissed at me, but you will soon, so don't trust anyone in the north, your grace. Cat! Ned shouted, by this point his face red with anger or embarrassment. Oberyn approached me and whispered with a smile, I haven't seen someone hold this amount of hate since Cersei Lannister, and let's just say it's not normal. You are nothing but a dash. Caitlin was about to start her verbal assault, but a glare stopped her for a moment. I'm not interested in the puny thoughts of an idiot, I said, making sure each word was loud and clear. Ned tried to approach and defuse the situation, but Oberyn took a step forward with a smile that said, take another step and we'll be dancing. I won't stand and let my family follow. Taking a step forward, I closed the gap between us, making her fall to the ground, fear starting to sink in on her head. Not only you have disrespected me but also decided to waste my time with your sorry presence, so next time you would do well to remember your place and bow, I growled, seeing the tension building up around. Robb was like a cat ready to pounce at me. Ned was on the same situation with Oberyn, one wrong move and a brawl would break free. I won't allow, Caitlin started, but I wasn't going to let her talk. Shut your mouth. I shouted loud enough to make an echo thunder through the city, making the birds fly out the trees in alarm, and in turn making Caitlin immediately comply. You have failed your house and your family, and your only chance to redeem yourself is to obey this simple order. You are to never show your face again to me, or leave Winterfell. Meanwhile I will take the crown, rule the 7 kingdoms, and in the process I will take immense satisfaction in knowing you couldn't do anything but comply. That clear? Caitlin was shaking at this point, sweating her own weight by the second. I made sure to let her know with my eyes should she speak again I would kill her. Caitlin nodded, lost in thought. Good, I nodded as I turned to the Starks. I'm not without mercy, but if she ever threatens me again, I will give you a choice, Lord Stark, killing her or going to war with me. Either way, she will die. All your choice changes is the amount of corpses you are choosing to leave behind, so remember that should she cross that line again. Is that clear? Crystal, Ned Stark nodded. Maybe I had been a tad rough with her and the Starks, but the bitch just said she wanted me dead, and would make sure of it. This shit was the sequel for Rayall, Harry Potter, and the audacity of this bitch. Chapter 85. After the little incident with Lady Stark, we continued the introductions, Sansa's among them. She smiled and hugged me, thanking me for saving her family, and wished me a happy marriage. That was unexpected. As for Robb, he was between a thin line of wanting to protect his mother and knowing she fucked up. After that really uncomfortable moment, we went to a private room to discuss a few certain things. For one, Jon wanted to tell me something that he said was really important, and considering he was in the wall recently I can already tell what. Ned, on the other hand, wanted to discuss our alliance, and his son betrothal, which we had accepted but under the condition, the arrangement could be broken at any given time if Daisy deemed the boy unworthy of her time. On my part, I wanted to discuss and start planning our strategy against the Lannisters. Father, King Ronard, winter is coming, Jon said with a dreadful look on his face, fear very prominent on his entire self, confirming my suspicions. And? Oberyn inquired, summer's coming and you don't see me crying. I chuckled, turning to Jon, letting him I wanted him to continue. I saw them, the White Walkers from the stories, they are coming, Jon said, his expression filled with a deep fear that somehow was overruled by his strong sense of duty. Jon, that's a child's story, Ned Stark said with a worried expression. His son was going crazy. No, it's not, I said before Jon could even defend himself. Elaborate, Oberyn inquired with a serious expression. He knew I rarely joked or messed around. It's one of the main reasons I decided to get the crown, because alone we stand no chance against the army of the death. I sighed. For the first part, one had no idea how strong the Night King was, and secondly his army was probably bigger than mine as of now. Jon was surprised and relieved. I believed him while Ned was mostly confused. Dragons are real, magic is real, the White Walkers are, if you think about it, pretty believable. How do you know they are real? Ned inquired. I could see on his face he didn't believe me. The same reason fire doesn't work on me, I answered. It was partly a lie, but it would get the job done, the same way I knew how to hatch the dragon eggs, and the same way I knew you would die if I didn't save you. How? Oberyn inquired. The god of light or Waller, I sighed. I didn't like giving him credit for all of that, but when in doubt how to explain something use the default option, faith. I didn't consider you to be the religious type, Oberyn said, tilting his head, and he was right for the most part. I fucking hated the gods of this world. I'm not, fuck this god. He put a bunch of responsibilities on me, and all he gave me for this important mission was the ability to survive the one thing the others don't use, fire. I spat, like for real, make me ice resistant or something. Yes, the fire thing helped me to hatch the dragons, but besides that, it would be a useless skill. A god told you? Ned said with a tone that said, I don't believe jack of what you are saying. I know it's hard to believe, but I have proof, I sighed. Knowing the best way to make them believe me was showing them something so hard to dismiss they would have to accept my word as facts. Let's try and burn me, shall we? Well, now this is interesting, Oberyn commented with a chuckle. It was time to show the world that I couldn't be burned and that fear would at least make the White Walkers/God story sound less crazy, so with that in mind, I proceeded, ordering a servant to set a campfire outside. Once the fire was set, I put my naked hand on the fire for 5 minutes. This is interesting, Oberyn muttered, looking at my hand with complete shock, seeing how the fire burned the wood but left my hand intact. Impressive, only the Targaryens were known for this uncommon feat, and not even all of them. It was said that just some privileged bunch among them were blessed with dragon blood and like you had this unique fireproof ability. Well, I'm no Targaryen, I chuckled, my hand still on the fire. Impressive, Jon added, looking at my hand closely. That much is true, Oberyn chuckled. Turning around, I noticed something that I didn't expect. Ned Stark was worried, terrified, his eyes fixated on my hand, but I could see it wasn't the fact I couldn't be burned that worried him, but something else that bothered him. And then it hit me, what was happening through his head was Jon. He must have tried this with Jon at some point in his life when he was a baby or something, either that or Jon touched fire by mistake and this situation is putting him on an edge. But there is a Targaryen among us, I smiled, giving Oberyn a look. Oberyn's eyes widened in surprise as he immediately put all the dots together, the fact that we had come to save Jon, and that I promised him he wouldn't die. I never expected that of the Honorable Wolf, to betray his friend that hard. Oh, this is priceless, Oberyn laughed, his eyes glued on Jon. Ned Stark was at this point sweating, which was by itself very hard considering the temperature around us. I don't know what. Ned, it's okay, I won't hurt him, I sighed. If there was someone I wanted to be a lord was Jon. He had no ambition, and was loyal as fuck. Who? What is going on? Jon asked, looking at his father. You, I pointed at Jon. Me, no. I'm a bastard, Jon said with the utmost confidence of what he was saying. Nope, your father is actually your uncle. This comment made Ned tense up. Your mother was Lyanna Stark and your father was Rhaegar Targaryen. Oberyn finished for me. It all makes sense now, Ned Stark breaking his oaths. That was hard to believe, but him lying was even harder to believe. We always assumed Jon's mother was Aeshera Dane, but even that was far-fetched. Father, tell me is a lie, or a joke of bad taste, please. Jon said, confusion, doubts, and uncertainty on his eyes. He was starting to believe our words had some merit. You won't hurt him? Ned inquired, ignoring Jon. Never, I mean. If he tries to hurt me, then yes, but otherwise, we are good, and that was the truth. I would never hurt Jon just because he had Targaryen blood, because of how he was raised. I knew I could trust him. Father. Jon was on the verge of melting down, his emotions fluctuating like a Christmas light. It's true, Jon, Ned said with a faint smile. Know that this doesn't change anything. I love you, and you will always be my son. Know that I didn't want to lie to you, but it was the only way to save you, to keep you out of Robert's sight. All this time, my mother was right underneath us. And I. Jon said with tears rolling down his face, all this time I thought I was a mistake. An error, something that shouldn't have existed. Jon. Ned Stark said, approaching to try and hug the crying man. You let everyone hurt me. John shouted, anger finally taking over. Lady Stark, Theon, everyone in the household, you let them treat me like trash. And the worst part was that I felt like I deserve it. Why? You could have told Lady Stark at least. To be fair with him, Lady Stark is not the smartest gal around, so it was wise of him to not tell her. Then again, I don't really know if she knows how to keep a secret. While it was true Ned managed his situation quite badly, he didn't do everything badly. My experiences with Lady Stark say she would have killed John by telling her sister or something. Shut up! John cried out. Hey, I know right now you are going through an emotional moment and all, but try that again, and I will introduce you to the ground, and believe me, your relationship with it will be intimate, I warned John. I will steal that phrase, Oberyn said as he wrote what I said on a piece of paper. Let's give them a moment, I sighed, deciding to let the two wolves talk their shit out. I have a feeling that if I stay I will end up beating the crap out of an emotional teen, and I know I will feel bad about later. Fair enough, Oberyn chuckled, following me close behind. Caw. We will stay. Caw. Caw. This is too good to miss. I bet motherfucker A will punch motherfucker B. Caw. Was that a raven with a black coat and an eye patch? This marks the end of part 17 of the story Game of Thrones, The Prideful One. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.